Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher, and I share my creative process here with you on the internet. If you'd like to support this channel, get additional bonus live streams twice a month, be able to read my comic books for free digitally, join our Discord server community where we share artwork and creative comments, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month at patreon.com/GERIMI. It's patreon.com/Jeremy. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, receive work in progress animated gifts delivered directly into your inbox, receive little blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's kind of fueling my creative engine, you can become a newsletter subscriber at newsletter.jeremy.net. I also share whenever I have new books or new artwork to release. You can get all of that for free in my monthly newsletter, newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics free digitally on Kindle or Comixology, go to amazon.jeremy.net. I'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It's a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. It's a self-contained black and white graphic novel. I've got book flip-throughs of that available on the homepage of my YouTube channel. You can also pick up my most recent project, Morningstar. It is Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. Volume 1 has, well, that's Volume 2. Volume 1 has issues 1 through 4, the first half of the series. Volume 2 has issues 5 through 8, the conclusion of the series. Both have extensive back matter, character sketches, character designs, script excerpts, and more, showing you my creative process. You can pick up all those at my Amazon author page. All right, and speaking of my Patreon, I want to give a shout out to King's Low Fit, new Patreon subscriber. Joined me on the most recent session of Art Book Study Group. We had a nice time hanging out, sketching from Walt Reed's The Figure. And he was listening to me going on and on about, anatomy ins and outs and ramblings. So it was good times for all. Thank you for supporting the channel and being a subscriber. I see Amar's in the chat. How you doing, man? Thanks for showing up. Let's see here. All right. I also want to give a shout out to Brian Cobran. He is a subscriber who joined over the summer, and I thought that I gave him a shout out on the live stream publicly. But for some reason, as I was going through my notes, my messages, I'm like, did I give him a shout out? And, hey, it never hurts to shout out people more than once. Just tell them that you appreciate them and let them know that you feel the love. So, here's to you, Brian. All right. So what am I at? What am I working on? What am I doing? So, yeah. Hey, Medusas. So this was funny. After all of the back and forth that I've been going on about these pieces, I think I was putting together my blog post for the 1st of January, and I happened to be scrolling through some old blog posts, and I saw this particular layout drawing, and I thought to myself, you know what? I have been, dragging the screen there. I've been, kicking myself trying to find a good pose I'm really happy with. And I looked at this and I'm like, this works. Why didn't I just use this one? Why? Why are we going through all this? When I've got a piece that works. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and move forward with this one and refine it. That said, I still feel like the actual angle of the face, the facial expression that I got in the original one, I don't think I really have duplicated that. I was tempted to do one more pass on actually not do one more pass, but on this original thumbnail, I have 2 different methods for thumbnailing. See here, Cassiel's in the chat, says, what's up? He says, what's your new Japanese background? You know what? I will tell you. I've had this for the past few live streams, but I haven't said anything because I was just curious if anyone even noticed or gave a damn. But the background behind me, so this isn't a digital virtual background. This is an actual physical Japanese screen that I bought because the green screen doesn't seem to work. I don't know why. I think it's because of my laptop. I think it would, if I were doing the live stream from my desktop computer, it would work fine. But for whatever reason, the green screen function isn't working when I'm live streaming. And I just got tired of looking at the background that I had. I wanted something a little bit nicer, a little bit cleaner. But I also didn't want to, like the banners that I have behind my convention table would be perfect, except for the fact that then I would have these big ass banners in my studio all the time. And I don't want to have to like bring it down and then just put it up every Sunday. It would just, I don't know. It felt like it would be more trouble than it's worth. Whereas this is just a screen that folds up, just a simple room divider. So when I'm not using it, I just fold it back up against the wall, and then I bring it out for the live streams. So yeah, that's the new Japanese background there. So thank you for noticing. I was curious if anybody else had seen it or not. So that is that. Right, what was I saying about? Oh yeah, thumbnails. So I generally, the method I've taken in the past is just draw multiple thumbnails on one sheet and tweak all of them and do little different things. So that's my main way of doing it. But I was talking to King's Little Fit during the art book study group live stream, and he mentioned the animation process of you draw a thumbnail, you put a layer or a sheet of paper if you're working on a light box, put a sheet on top of that and make corrections, and you put another sheet on top of that and make corrections and make corrections. And I thought, as opposed to doing that process on doing the process that I normally do, where I've just got a bunch of thumbnails side by side and tweaking them, what would happen if I were to experiment with that layered thumbnailing process? So if you guys will indulge me for, this is the reason why it takes me forever to finish a comic book, why it takes me, forever to finish an illustration, is because I'm always going through experimenting and doing different things. But even though I have come to a thumbnail that I am happy with and that I could just go forward with and start illustrating. You know what? Hang on. Let me turn these off. I just want to look at the page where I've got the other poses that I was considering. I will tell you that this one right here, where you're kind of looking at her more from the back, I actually kind of like that one enough that I might want to do that one in addition. Like just do different poses of the same character. But for now, while I am pretty sure that this one, the one in blue, is the one that I am likely to go forward with, I want to experiment with that process that I have not really, done in a long time, where I just take the one thumbnail, and this might seem kind of stupid, but I actually want to duplicate this just so that I can move it to the center of the screen. Actually, not just move it to the center of the screen. Let's move it to the center and enlarge it a bit. Let me see what happens if I go. All right. So if I zoom max out, that's good. I want to see what happens if I just do 5 layers worth of revision on top of this. See, Amar says, man, I appreciate it. Amar's like you can't let go of the perfectionism, but you got to do you. I can't let go of the perfectionism. I'm like a crackhead with that perfectionism, man. I'm like a dog with a bone. I mean, I will tell you that part of it's not so much wanting to get this particular piece perfect. It's that I'm also constantly revising my working processes. So the idea of a different way of working through whether a piece is working or not, or a different way of problem solving, it's interesting to me as an exercise to sit down and try to work through this in a different method than I normally work, just to see how it changes my brain. So, and another, I think a new member to the chat, Yoshi, is in here and says, your line work is pretty unique. I like it. Well, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. I'm always beating myself up about my process and trying to get, that's where Amar comes in with the perfectionism. I think it's more of a fact that I always feel like what I see in my head, I think this is true for many artists, what I see in my head is not what I get down on the paper. And I'm always chasing that I guess that's the where the perfectionism comes in. That ideal version that's inside my head. I'm always chasing that. So I'm going to lock that layer because I have a bad habit of drawing on the wrong layer. And I know you guys, I'm sure anybody who's done some digital work knows the frustration of working on a piece and then getting a certain point in and realizing, oh, I have drawn on an area where I was not supposed to draw. So what I'm trying to do right now is kind of combine the ideas of building a strong silhouette with the idea of working out my volumes. I was watching a live stream on the Proco channel. It was a live stream with the artist Modern Day James. He was doing some animation. And I found it very inspiring to see how quickly he gets to a very direct and simple line. Because he was doing an animation piece, so he can't really mess around. And animators also have to think in terms of very simple volumes, which I've done some animation in the past, and I didn't stick with it because it's a hell of a lot of work. I highly, highly respect animation as an art form, but I think if anything, I would probably enjoy being a storyboard artist more than I would enjoy being an actual animator, because it can be tedious. And I think part of that, again, is because of my rather slow, laborious methods. I guess what I'm getting at is the process of having to draw the same thing multiple times, not in the way I'm doing it, but just you got to draw this pose and then move on to the next pose and the next pose, or you got to work on your keyframes and you got to do in-betweens. There may be something to that process speeding you up as an artist, because you don't have time to dilly-dally. You got to keep moving to the next part of the piece and the next part of the piece. But I think the thing that I took away, kind of inspired from that, was trying to get to a very simple version of the piece. How strong his silhouettes were in terms of like helping the character read what they were doing. But at the same time, they were strong silhouettes, but did not feel flat. They still felt three-dimensional and volumetric. So I'm trying to get in here and play with getting a strong silhouette, but then going in and building out volumes. Let's see here. Yoshi says, do you think that using reference is good for beginner artists, poses and stuff? I think that reference is good for artists of all stages. In fact, one of the things I didn't have a chance to do before this live stream was shoot some reference. But I have, like, along with this little head skull that I have here in front of me, I've also got multiple little busts of human heads. They're like based on I think like Italian Renaissance sculptures or English sculptures, but they're just over, or some Greek sculptures, but they're just little busts. And I was gonna take one and light it according to the lighting that is set up in this piece, because I thought that might help with me working through the lighting and structure of it. I will tell you that for me, a big problem that I've had in the past is that while I think reference is good for artists of all levels, I don't think anyone ever teaches you how to properly use reference. And that was something that I think it took years of reading other art books and reading about artists' process to get a sense of how I feel reference is most helpful. Part of that comes from the fact that I did go to art school, but the art school I went to was not an illustration program. And I think illustrators, they really know how to use reference efficiently because illustrators are moving at a much faster timeline than fine artists. They have to crank pieces out. Um, oh, I see John Ersick's in the chat. I have more to say on reference, but I'm gonna just run through and just say hi to everybody else in here. My buddy John Ersick's here, and he says I use a scrim to keep from drawing on the wrong layer. And yes, hi to you too. Oh, that might be autocorrect. You may have, I don't know if you meant to say you use a script to keep from drawing on the wrong layer, because I am not sure what a scrim is. But in terms of like, yeah, for me, I've only got, I've got tons of layers in this file, but I only have 2 visible, and I just lock the one I don't want to draw on. And actually, normally, I actually have not had too much of a problem with drawing on the wrong layer, but that's because I've been doing digital art for so many years now that what I'll do is, what I tend to lock is if I have a thumbnail, and that's kind of the basis for everything I'm doing, I'll lock that layer. But everything else, if I'm going to be, working on, like with this, I was going to say, all right, what happens if I just draw this one sketch and then put another layer on top and then put another layer on top? What happens if I, I'm only really worried about drawing on that very base thumbnail. All the other layers, if I draw on top of them accidentally, because they're going to be kind of process layers, I'm okay with that. Let's see here. Ronnie Draws is in the chat. And he says, I feel it's a matter of shaping until you get what's in your head. And he said, but in our case, the undo button is our best friend. You know what? That's true. The undo button is our best friend, but also our worst enemy, because I'm sure you fall into that trap where you just keep hitting undo and hitting undo and hitting undo. And sometimes you got to move forward with a piece. Look who's talking. I ain't got no business talking to anybody about moving forward. But that said, do as I say, not as I do. But to a certain degree, I try to be aware of what I'm just hitting undo and hitting undo over and over instead of actually making some progress on a piece. And I will tell you that the only reason why I'm spending so much time on this one particular thumbnail is because I find it mentally interesting. Like, I want to understand what's happening in my brain when I sketch out a thumbnail that really captures something I want, and then that element, that elusive element, does not show up in the final line work, because I'm trying to move my artwork. Like, this whole exercise of exploring and doing multiple, that's the interesting thing for me. Is this is not just me trying to get a piece finished, because if I were, I would just do it and be done. But trying to understand what's happening inside of my art brain, particularly in that relation to drawing a piece, seeing that spark that makes you say, oh, this is what interests me about drawing this particular thing, or this is what interests me about art in general, and then not being able to get that down on the page. That disconnect interests me. I want to understand why that disconnect is happening in my brain. So this exploration of process is me really exploring the disconnect. Let's see here. The chat is hopping today. Let's see here. Yeah, Yoshi says animation is migraine fuel. Tried it. Let's see here. Amar says he's still learning it as well. I see him practicing it on his Twitch streams. I think he's talking about modern day James and the animations that he's doing. I mean, I looked at it. I thought he was doing an amazing job. Like, it was particularly simple and stripped down. I actually shared it with another artist on our Discord, Nigro Facetta, because he's been looking at animation as well. I mean, Amar, the funny thing is, when I think about it, I'm like, you can skip all that if you just go straight to Blender like you do, and just like, you just model the forms and animate the forms. That seems, I mean, but you know, I have to imagine it's a little bit more complicated than that when you're doing character animation. But for seeing 2D line art animated, I was very, very impressed. I haven't done animation in well over a decade, but when I did, I was animating in Flash, and it actually, what's odd is it wasn't particularly action heavy animation. Like, I did one piece that had a lot of action in it, but most of the animation I did was actually kind of a weird horror story with a lot of family drama to it. So I don't think I really tried as many of the actual action techniques. And I used a lot of cycles. So I would do the kind of thing where, I mean, yes, you're supposed to use, you know, walk cycles in animation, but I would use symbols and move them in a pattern so that I would just create a symbol for the feet and then make a kind of a funny cartoon, like kind of a Barney Rubble type, you know, like the feet just tumbling over. And once I did that, then I would make that into a symbol unto itself, and I could just put that under the character whenever they had to walk. So everyone's walk was some variation of very simple symbols. But you know what? I mean, I think people who choose animation and really are passionate about it, it's just like this. What I'm doing might be really frustrating and migraine inducing to some people. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar does mention I'm working through doing frame by frame animation, so I know the struggle. Now, I'd be interested to hear from you, and I'm sure you probably have answered it already, so I'll get to it in the chat. But I'm interested, given your 3D background, whether you have a preference for 3D versus frame by frame animation, or if there's a reason why you chose for the project you're doing now to do your animations frame by frame instead of using Blender and just going full Pixar. Let's see here. Ronnie Draw says animation is extremely strenuous, but if you're working with the studio, you have other artists filling in frames. Yes, Yoshi says color is the most frustrating. You know what? I find color frustrating too, but you know, I figure if you're working in an animation studio, you hopefully have a lead artist who can guide you through any of the particularly hairy parts of getting your colors down. Now I'm wondering if I even want to bother with getting all of the serpents in here, because I can tell you right now the problem that I'm looking at when I see this is the face. Let me unlock. You know, I don't even need to unlock it. I think that's what's bothered me about all of these, is just the face doesn't look like the face that I see in my head. Whereas the face up here, this simple, rough face, looks like the face that I want her to have. And I have not been able to get that face. That's what's driving me crazy. I can't get her face right in any of the other sketches that I do. Let's see what else is going on in the chat. See, Amar says everything has strain points. but once you break through, you come out better. Drawing the animation is more difficult than coloring and inking. Coloring and inking is a breeze Coloring and inking is a breeze in comparison to coloring. I'm not sure if I follow that one, but that's also the problem with drawing and then jumping in and out of the chat. Oh, let's see here. John Ersick says, I'll have to send you a tutorial, but a scrim is a filter put on a light in a real world. In Photoshop, it's basically a layer with a color modifier so that if you're on the wrong layer, your brush stroke instantly changes color. That is good to know. I don't know if such a thing exists for Procreate or not. That will be interesting. I'll have to look. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says, without the base of good art for comics or animation, you have nothing to work with. Coloring is just flatting, shading, and highlighting. Well, I think that there's also mood and story that's involved in there as well. I think John definitely, like John being a color artist as well as an educator, definitely, could expound on the emotional and storytelling aspects of color. Because I definitely think, personally, I enjoy color a lot more when it is not just representing real life. I think that emotional color, and I think that's the balance. It's really easy to have, you've got a fight scene or somebody gets stabbed, red background, or, electricity going off, blue background. But I think that when you've just got going through people having conversations, a meeting in an office, things that aren't necessarily conflict oriented, but you're also still not necessarily just doing observational, this is a room in average daylight color. I think that mood coloring for emotion in scenes that aren't necessarily conflict oriented, that's where I think it gets interesting. Because then I think it becomes interesting because you're just conveying more subtle emotions with color as opposed to dramatic ones. Like I akin, and I bet John has heard this metaphor before, but I akin coloring in comics to a composer in film. Because if you watch a film with no score at all, it can come out very dry and very flat. And yes, I know my comics are black and white. Neither here nor there. But when you watch a film with a very well done score, it heightens and peaks emotional moments. It can create an emotional misdirect by moving a score in one direction and then turning another. I think it literally does to me the same thing that a great composer does. Let's see here. I see John saying you could be drawing in red, but you have a desaturate layer above your artwork. So if you draw on the wrong layer, the brushstroke instantly turns gray. So scrim is between your current art and your old artwork. This is I always set one up when inking comics. Let's see here. Amar says, I think him drawing in red is like the non-replo blue normally using. They do that in animation as well. No, I'm kind of all over the map. I'm pretty loosey-goosey with the conversations. My drawing in red, this came from two things. One, I was an intern many years ago at Nickelodeon, and a lot of the character designers and storyboard artists, they did their roughs in red pencil, and I just tried it because it looked cool when they did it. So I mean, how many things have we done in our life when we were young because somebody else did it and it looked cool? But I found that in my process of doing any type of drawing or redrawing or working on multiple layers, I found that I needed a different color than just the graphite to lay on top. And I found that blue, for some reason, my eyes find the blue a little bit harder to read. So it was just a matter of blue or red. I mean, hell, you could use whatever color you want. But it really also comes out of when I was drawing comic books traditionally, I haven't started my first digital comic yet. But when drawing comics traditionally, I would work on on vellum, which is a tracing paper that is thicker than the normal really thin tracing paper, but at the same time it's it has the thickness and durability of just a regular copy paper where you can draw and erase. It's a lot more durable, but it has the transparency of tracing paper. And I found that I would do my rough pass on one side of the paper, and then I would come around on the back side and do a revision, corrections. And the corrections are what I would end up scanning into the computer, and then I would flip them digitally and use that to print out for my inking. So they were rough pencils. In that process of flipping the vellum over, if I drew my original rough sketches in pencil, in graphite, in black and white, when I made my corrections, they were the exact same color, so I couldn't tell between the lines that I wanted to keep versus the lines I was correcting. And if I drew in red for my corrections, the red was lighter than the graphite. So I got into the habit of doing my initial drawings in red first, with graphite being used for the corrections, and that way I could see them better. So, and that just kind of stuck. So my process has tended to be, if I'm roughing something in, I don't always use red. Like I've got my sketchbook isn't here in the office, in the studio, but I was just doing a sketch the other day, and I do have the pencils I used. Instead of sketching in red, I was using some sienna brown Prismacolor pencils. This guy. So I mean, I'll use any color for a rough sketch, just to see what it looks like. I play around. I've, like most artists, I've got like a massive box full of art supplies, and I just go around and just try different stuff. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says he's getting there. I tend to favor one-to-one animation and Aaron Blaze. I see someone new in the chat. Unique Master Rocks says, how mangakas compose a scene. That's a good question. I will tell you that while I haven't written any manga lately, I do enjoy manga, but I haven't really taken a deep dive in terms of how scenes are composed in terms of manga. I know that they call I believe somebody else has mentioned to me that they refer to their layouts as storyboards. So but yeah, I think that it's not too different from American comics in terms of, you just got a page, you break it down into panels. Like for me, any given page, the first thing I do is I look at my script. Oh, that's what it was. I think the person, I was talking to somebody who studied manga quite a bit, and what I refer to as the layout, they refer to as a manga script. So I guess manga artists tend to plot out their books visually, or at least some manga artists do. I don't really know. Again, not having done a deep dive, but it seemed to me that it was just a matter of breaking it down into however many, maybe you've got a splash page at the top, and you've got 3 tiers, and then 2 tiers, and you've just got, maybe it's your establishing shot of some building, and you've got maybe a couple of people in the foreground. Maybe you've got a high shot looking down. Opacity up, brush size down. And mind you, you'd be doing it right to left instead of left to right. You've got your characters entering the building. You've got the same shot of them entering the building. But then you've got, I don't know, some weird demon up in the corners of the building. Get a close up of that creature's eye, its teeth, and a little bit of drool. And maybe you've got one of the characters in the foreground. You've got the creature descending on it. Now, I will tell you the thing, I'm just making this episode going along. If I had this to do, well, I do have this to do over again. But first off, I can tell you in terms of storytelling, what I just did there, I would totally take, where's the selection? This shot, why is my selection all sideways? That's weird. Freehand. That shot of the creature falling or descending on them, that should be the last shot, so that the page turn is ending on a dramatic note. Well, you asked about page composition. It's really about page composition is really about pacing and storytelling. You kind of want to end each panel on a beat that makes you want to turn the next page. You could also set this up where you've got all the build up, and then you have the creature reveal on the next page. You know, it doesn't matter what the story says, and then you just put something in here where you've just got the two characters maybe talking. First, leaving some room for the word balloons above. But yeah, I mean, composing a page is really just thinking out story. It's story beats. Let's see here. Back to Amar. Says they come from the school of traditional Disney animators. And he said, once I get beyond rigging, I would use that for content animation. I guess doing 3D characters. Let's see, Pavel's in the chat. Hey, good to see you, man. How you been? Let's see here. Amar says, only doing frame by frame to get decent enough speed in my comp book. Pavel says, just here for a moment. How are you, Jeremy? I am well. As you can see, I am still drawing Medusas. Well, I mean, other than drawing a quick comic layout demo or comic composition sketch. Yeah, I've been well, been chugging along. Actually, I've been spending the past few weeks really just finishing up the painting that I think I had mentioned I was working on for my wife. That is done. We're actually moving it from the room it was placed on. It was the wall it was designed for to a different wall in the house. So it's not going to be a big project, except for the fact that I kind of have to do some new measurements to make sure. Well, placing a quadric or a a 4-image art piece, four canvases, making them all line up properly is a little bit of a pain in the ass. So that's going to be a little bit of work. Other than that, that's been my main focus, starting the year off by getting that complete, and I completed it. Um, Again, my perfectionism's still there. There's stuff in there that I am not 100% in love with. But my wife is very happy with it, and she is the quote unquote client for that piece. So that's all that matters. Let's see here. Pavel says, "Oh my God, this is the worst when the sketch is better." He says hi to everybody. Um, Amar says, "Sorry, meant in comparison to drawing." He says, "Sorry, multitasking and typing. You're multitasking and typing. I'm drawing and reading, so at least I have the advantage of being able to flap my gums. I don't have to type while I'm sketching. Otherwise, this would be literally impossible." Let's see here. Let's see here. John Ersick says, "Yeah, I first heard the color track theory from Steve Oliff, comparing coloring to the soundtrack." Um, yeah, Steve Oliff, a color master, shepherded digital coloring into the comics era, or shepherded the digital coloring era into comics, I guess. Me no use words well. Aside from the fact that the face, that's the thing that, and you know what, and faces are difficult to draw. That no doubt. Um, but aside from the face not being right, I have felt over the past few months, I think because I'm spending less and less time drawing. Like I'm working in smaller increments. Like I usually am only able to find an hour here or an hour there. I will tell you that this sketch that I did does nothing for me. I'm just going to delete that extra layer that I had, and I am going to just come in here and just sketch faces until I can get kind of the character that I'm trying to establish down. But what was I going to say about drawing? The source, that sense of the feeling connected. I don't know if you, flow, that's what I'm thinking about. So I don't know how many of you really think about flow or talk about flow. I mean, Amar many times has dropped the comment in the chat, "Be like water," that famous Bruce Lee chat, not chat, quote. But the idea of feeling in the flow when you are working on a piece and it is expressing everything that you want it to express. Um, that process where you feel like you are connected to the universe while you're drawing. And in fact, the act of making art is the act of connecting to the universe. I have found that while I've trained myself, for good reason, I've trained myself to work in small increments of time, because if I don't, I rarely have like 3 or 4 uninterrupted hours to make art. And I find that I won't do anything at all if I don't force myself to work in little bits. But the downside is that lately I've been feeling, it's not like I don't enjoy drawing, but I don't feel connected to that flow, that sense of that flow state. And I think that that has been impacting my ability to get things the way I want them to in a drawing, you know. So I might need to spend more time. Well, everyone. I think there isn't a single artist out there who says, "Oh, I don't need to spend more time drawing." Everyone is like, "Oh, I need more time at the drawing table." But I really, for me, the time is about not strengthening one particular craft so much as when you're in what I believe that what I can think of as the flow state, when you are really connected to it, you make better lines, you make better artistic choices. And it's not 100% skill, it's not 100% instinct. It's some sort of weird combination of both. It's when Neo in the Matrix looks and he really sees the zeros and ones. Um, and I think I've experienced this a lot in figure drawing class where I fall into the flow state and the drawings come really, really well. And almost like if you guys, but you can also feel yourself falling out of the flow state, which can be kind of a frustrating experience. For those of you who are of legal age to consume alcohol, have you ever had the experience of staying up all night after partying and you're surprised that you aren't hungover because of how much you may have drank, and then you're actually conscious for a hangover setting in, which I have to tell you, to me, that is one of the worst feelings on earth. It's one thing to wake up hungover, it's another thing to be conscious and all of a sudden be like, huh, my head hurts a little bit. My head hurts a little bit more. My stomach feels upset. My stomach is cramping. I have to throw up. Like to just feel it, like just you're awake. It's not even like you're up late and you're still partying, you're throwing up. It's one of those where you're past the partying. It's like the next morning, it's like 5 or 6 in the morning, or maybe even 10 in the morning, and you're like, I can't believe I'm not hungover. And then you feel it descend on you. To me, that's what falling out of the flow state feels like. And I haven't had to worry about that lately because I haven't even been able to get into the flow state. So I'm curious about you guys. Like, I mean, there is another thing where, there's the whole idea of inspiration has to find you working. So you make art whether you're in the flow state or not. But I'm curious whether getting into the flow state or not has much of an impact on the rest of you guys in your creative lives. Because it impacts me quite heavily. Let's see here. Lots of discussion in the chat on color from Amar, but I feel like it's too. He went too deep. I can't follow him. Not because it's not dope, but just it's a it's a quick conversation in the chat. It's deep, and I would have to, let's see here. I'd have to go back to the top there. But in terms of animation, yeah, because a lot of Amar was saying the one-to-one is help training him, building up his speed for doing his own comics. He said, so once you can animate 1 minute of animation in a month's time, you can do 2 to 4 72-page graphic novels in a month. Well, I think that would be pretty impressive speed and impressive pace. I look forward to seeing you knock that out. I will say that the difference in terms of doing 1 minute of animation is that your start point and your end point is much more clear. Whereas when you are let me put this way, the decisions you make about each drawing are far less complicated from pose to pose to pose than they are from panel to panel to panel. And I think that those comic decisions require more careful consideration to make sure the story is satisfying and logical. So I don't know if just by number of drawings that being able to draw a minute of animation a month, I don't know if I agree that that will translate directly to being able to draw a couple of graphic novels a month. It might, and I think that you should try, and I encourage you to try. And I look forward to seeing the results of the experiment. But have you considered the ramifications of the actual decision making, the storytelling decisions that are required in the drawings from page to page, because that might impact the pacing. Let's see here. Yeah, and Amar had asked about the painting I was working on. And yeah, instead of a triptych, it's a quadrip. Let's see. Jimmy King's in the chat. How you doing, man? Thanks for dropping by. By the way, Amar, I'll post on the Discord. Well, I'll post it publicly too. I'll post the final painting. Kingslow Fit actually commented, and he was right about it. He commented that the jaw position was too wide open, so the jaw is almost like this, completely open, whereas realistically it should be like, if you have it like the head down, the jaw would be open that way. It would be to a lesser degree, and so the jaws are too wide open. And I asked my wife, I said, look, I see this problem, this mistake with it. You know me and my perfectionism. Or do you want me to just go ahead and change it, or do you want me to leave it the way it is? Which, knowing her and how long I've been working on it, I figured her answer would be like, God, please just be done with this painting. So I left it the way it was, but I left it with the caveat of telling her that if I'm looking at this day after day, week after week on the walls, and that jaw starts to bother me, I may take that one particular panel down and repaint the head. And she said, okay, that's fair. So it is done, but it's done with knowing that there is an anatomical flaw in it that I may come back and change later on. But I appreciate her patience altogether, because it's been 6 years since I was going to make this present for this painting for her. This was supposed to be a wedding gift for her. So what she says goes with it. But she also knows that living with me when I'm dissatisfied with a piece of artwork is kind of a nightmare. God damn it, I'm a perfectionist. I never thought I'd be a perfectionist. I always used to say, I'm a loose artist, I'm sketchy, but I think that the act of trying to improve has made me pursue, well, that's the thing, I'm not pursuing perfection, I'm pursuing quality. And I think that my standards for what is and isn't good art it's risen pretty far out of the range of what I'm able to do right now. And it's not that I think that my art is horrible. It's that what I consider great art or really good art, that bar has gotten really high. And it's gotten so high that I just have a hard time reaching it now. So I think that, again, it's everyone has their own artistic struggles. I think this is something I'm going to work my way through eventually. I think that in terms of my artistic standards, I'm eating an elephant. So, I've heard that expression, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Somewhere over the past few years, my bar for quality has risen to elephantine levels. So I'm trying to swallow bites here and there. I mentioned I started a new session of figure drawing classes, taught by Carl Ganas, and I'm really enjoying those classes. And I already was having some really great thoughts and ideas about my process after our second session. Still refining and revising. You know what? I think I'm gonna... No, keep that brush size the same, but let's go to full opacity. You know what? Let me flip this. That's something I don't do enough. I know that I should be flipping my canvas all the time, and I don't. I'm going to switch brushes too. Go to a brush that's a little bit. The technical pen just gives me a lighter. I just like the stroke a little bit more. I will tell you that I enjoy drawing while I'm talking with you guys, but I think a big part of why this piece is so hard is because I'm not really focusing. I think that what I'm doing is I'm just trying to get a face right. And I don't think that that's actually, it's not particularly hard, but it requires concentration. And I think that's the thing that I have been lacking. I can carve out the time and I can have the different means and the different processes of analyzing what's good and what's bad. But the actual concentration, to really concentrate on a piece, to focus all of your mental attention, that feels like something that I have been sorely lacking. Scroll down here. In terms of the comment I made about comic decisions, storytelling decisions between animation and comics, Amar says that I think once you know the story, like the animation for comics, it's the same. He said because I look at them the same, but first I have to get to the point of doing 1 minute of animation. All right, then I'm really interested in hearing. I don't know if you know what. I actually haven't popped in on your live streams lately, which Amar does do great live streams. I'm not sure if are you just doing YouTube or are you doing Twitch streams? But Amar streams a lot of his creative process. I don't know how much you express. I don't remember how much you get into actually talking about what's going on in your head as you're working on the piece. Because for me, I mean, that's the hell. That's this whole live stream is me just I'm working on the piece, and then I'll be like, well, I'm thinking this, and I'm trying that, and this is the effect I'm going for. Because I am curious in terms of the storytelling decisions that you make when you're working when you're drawing comics that quickly. Of course, that might be the kind of thing where that would require you to do a whole separate video where you're looking at your work afterwards. Like it might not. I know for me, there's some types of analysis I can do while I'm drawing and talking, but there are also some kinds of analyses where I would need to be watching like a time lapse of my work in order to properly discuss what it is that I'm doing or not doing. And yes, I'm coming over here and I'm drawing an eye because I'm trying to get her eye just right. She's got kind of heavy um what's the name of the femme fatale from the Spirit? Something sand, sapphire sand. Um, can't remember her name, but those heavy upper lids. I mean, all this time I've been drawing her, I haven't even decided whether I'm going to give her pupils or not. Let's see here. And talks about the problems, the anatomical problems with the dragon. I see Amar says, well, in reality, we don't know because no one ever seen a dragon before, and it's a reptile. So it's left to your interpretation. The depictions of dragons in our culture is based on other images. Yeah, that's true. Although there are Komodo dragons, but again, those are just real lizards we have laying around. Of course, I don't know if you've ever looked at the work of Tara Whitlatch. She's a concept artist, but her background is very deeply steeped in natural illustration, like not medical illustration, but when you're doing like type of illustration for nature magazines and journals, you're able to draw very lifelike animals and creatures, kind of similar to James Gurney's work, but hers very specifically on animals of all kind, whereas James Gurney seems to focus a lot on dinosaurs when he, or that's what he gets commissioned to do anyway. But Tara Whitlatch does a great job of grounding very imaginative creatures. Because she did a lot of creature designs for, I believe the second trilogy of Star Wars movies, regardless of whether you like them or not. The creature designs in there were fantastic. I believe she did a lot of creature designs for that middle Star Wars trilogy, and she bases her work a lot on the anatomy of existing creatures, but then just twisting it, tweaking it, freaking it. Yeah, Amar says, if I was going off my real art compass, then I would never accept any art and I would not share anything. Well, that's the thing. I share the train wreck. I share the obsessing over a piece and just drawing it a million times and doing all of the different little iterations and reactions and trying to get pieces just right. Trying to get a and in fact, it's interesting. She's a gorgon, a Medusa, and I realized that's what I'm going for with the eyes. Is I'm trying to go for the way that snakes, serpents have very heavy eyelids often. That's what I'm trying to convey is the heaviness of her eyelids. That is what I'm trying to convey. Let's see here. Neymar says, I prefer the approach I've taken over the past 3 years or so. It's very freeing. Streaming on Twitch, he says, whenever I do, but not as much. When I do, I'm talking about a project, but I have not got to that point yet. He said, I think after completing these 15 issues written over the next couple of months, I can have the whole story mapped out. He said, so far I'm going for 12 pages on average of written single story, which ends up being 4 to 5 times that for a comic. Now, see, I find that interesting that you phrase it that way. I'm going for 12 pages on average of written single stories, single space, which ends up being 4 to 5 times that for a comic. See, to me, that seems really like, and I'm not, this isn't me being critical. It's me, well, I mean, I am sharing something that I think I might be interested in looking at a different way of writing. Because for me, the way that I write is I don't think about how many pages the actual script is, much like Alan Moore. For me, the whole thing is, all right, page 1. And then I write everything that's going to happen on that one single page of comic book page. Then page 2. And how many pages is going to be on that? So if I'm doing a 72-page graphic novel, then what I do is I've got like a bullet point of 72 points. And in each bullet point, I write down what happens in those pages. And sometimes I'll do something where, in fact, frequently I'll do it where I'll have within like 7, let's say page 5, I may have like 5, and there'll be 5A, 5B, 5C, 5D, or however more, like 5, 1.1, 5, 1.2, 5, 1.3. But I will work out how many panels are on every page so that I know before I go into drawing, it's not just, oh, I've got the story mapped out. I literally know what picture is going to be going in each page. And I should have all of the dialogue worked out as well. So I never really think about how long my comic book scripts are. I think about how does it specifically describe how many pages. So I know how many pages my book is before I start. If I'm doing a single issue comic, I tend to make them 24 pages. But if it's something that's going to be a 48-page graphic novel or a 72-page graphic novel, whatever it is, I will decide my page count beforehand, and I will work out the story to fit that page count. And if the story doesn't fit, then I decide that I want a different page count, or I decide that I need to edit stuff. One of the two. But I don't start drawing not knowing how long the book's going to be. And I find for me, how my brain processes information, that seems to help me narrow in on the story much better. So I'm not sure if that's something that would be useful for you. But yeah, I don't know how, I can't even wrap my brain around writing a comic, just starting writing a story and it just being single spaced and different pages, like just writing it like it's a novel or a prose or whatever. Or like a screenplay, even a screenplay has scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, scene 4. Like if I were writing it in a screenplay format, the scenes would be the pages, like the actual physical comic book page. So let's see here. Amar says, well, I'm writing till the story is complete. If it's more or less, but based on the last 2 I completed, that's what I've seen. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, I write out outlines before I, like when I write I have that whole video where I go through my entire writing process. But before I break it down into actual page by page outline, I'll just write a paragraph summarizing the story, and I might write a paragraph summarizing each issue or each chapter of it. So it's still me just writing in prose, kind of brainstorming, getting the whole story down. But then once I do that, I'm curious if you have a process where you convert your story into, like, actually breaking it down into actual pages before you start drawing, or whether you start drawing just from that script. Let's see here. Jay King says, what should I buy to start digital art? Any suggestions on a low budget, please? That is a good question. I'm sure Amar and I think a lot of other people in the chat would probably have some suggestions as well. Well, for drawing digitally, um, I would say the Huion tablets, which I don't actually own one. I have a Cintiq that was gifted to me. Then I also have a larger Cintiq for work. But the Huion tablets, I think that they're probably closer to they're not like thousands of dollars the way that the Cintiqs are. I think you can get a pretty large one for around like $300. They'll give you like one that's like I think at least as big as like a standard monitor that you would use, but it's a drawing tablet. So I would look at maybe getting that. I draw on an iPad and an iPad Pro, and I really prefer the iPad Pro, but it's not a. I was able to get it. I bought mine used, um, so I got a reasonable price on it, but they're pricey, so I would not necessarily recommend that if you're on a budget. So the Huion, I believe it's spelled Huion. Um, pen tablet. I don't own one, but the people I know who have used them love them and feel like, wow, it's a much better. Again, I use Wacom's for work. I use Cintiqs. I love them. They're great devices. But if you're budget minded, the people I know who have used them really recommend that. In terms of software, you don't need to break the bank to get a lot of good drawing software. Clip Studio Paint has a sale, like I think twice a year they have a sale where you can get the software for like $50, and it's from like a $200 software. There's something called, I believe it's called Photo C, and I believe it's Photoshop, but it's all browser based. But you can just go online and log on. In fact, you can do it right now. Open it in another window. But and if I'm wrong about the name of the software, someone feel free to correct me. But it literally is exactly like Adobe Photoshop, but it's a browser based drawing program. I'm trying to think of what other free, or let's see here. Amar says if you don't need a drawing monitor, you can get a drawing from XPen and other companies for less than $100. This is a medium version of the Wacom is 300. Yeah, I forgot about that. There's also there's versions of drawing tablets where you're not drawing on the monitor, where you just have like a tablet device that you sketch on, and you look up and look at your computer monitor. So if you've already got a computer and you just need the drawing device, you can probably go even cheaper. But I presume if you want to do digital art, you want a tablet surface you can draw on. So the Huions are pretty reasonable price. There's another software. I think it's called Krita. I've never used it, but it's another digital drawing app. I believe Krita is free. So there's Krita, there's Photo C. There's probably, I know there's a bunch of free drawing apps out there that you can use. I use Procreate, and that's an app that you pay for, and it's something that's for drawing digitally. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, Amar says Krita is close to Clip Studio Paint, so you might want to check out Krita as well. But yeah, if you were to just Google digital drawing apps, I'm sure you'll find a bunch of other stuff that you can use. And let's see here, 90 players in the chat says the Gaomon S620 tablet. He says it's like $30. So that's another option to check out. So yeah, and I think the Huion might be the one that Amar is talking about. He said for drawing screens, you can get them for 200 to $500, 12 to 22 inches. Um, and that, you know what? And there are competitors to Huion as well. I think there's at least one other company out there that's also making some small drawing tablets. So, or some lower budget drawing tablets. So hopefully those are all helpful, and hell, I look forward to seeing what you produce and what you get out there. So I quieted down for a second just because I'm kind of like almost like meditating. I'm trying to quiet my mind and really focus on what I want this character's look to express. I can tell you just the fact that I went there and did all those lines over the eye instead of just one direct line. Just undo that. That's the other thing. I am non-committal with my lines, and I should be more committal. Where I just come in and just, well, that one's really wonky, but just coming in, draw the line, commit to it, and then move on. Let's see here. Amar also mentions you can look out for the Infinity sales, get Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer. Now, I will tell you, I have painted and drawn in Affinity Photo. I use Affinity Designer for my personal design work. I actually really like it a lot. It is very affordable. I think they have sales a couple of times a year, but the actual, like, the software itself, I think is like 150 at full price for each one. I will tell that Affinity Photo, while it has a lot of the features of Photoshop, the drawing, the brush engine, and the act of drawing it is not necessarily, for me, I don't find it as gratifying. Like I have found very little as gratifying as actually drawing in Procreate. I really, really enjoy this program. Um, so I like the Affinity Suite. I use all of them. But I would say I'd be curious to hear from other people just drawing in Affinity Photo how much they like it, because I don't like that one for drawing as much. I'll do it if I have to. I drew the cover to Morningstar issue 7 in Affinity Photo. So again, using a different app is kind of like having different art tools. It's less about the tool and more about your skill as a draftsperson. You can make anything work if you know how to do it. Let's see here. Amar mentions X Pen is what he uses. He has a 22-inch X Pen that was $4.99 and had it for like 3 years. Let's see here. Blaze says, are there any Procreate Windows alternatives? I don't know if they make Krita for Windows. It sounds like they would. And I wish I could remember. Somebody else just recently recommended another digital drawing. I think it's called Medibang. Yeah. And I can't remember. Oh, wait, let me get that off the screen. Yeah, this app, Medibang. I tried it, or not tried it, but I looked at it and it looks kind of similar to Krita. Um, and I think it's cross-platform. So I think they've got a Windows version, a Mac version, and I believe they have versions for both both Android and Mac and iPhone OS. So that's another option to look at. Getting into the software recommendations. Software talk. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says I still take Clip Studio over Procreate. I think if they had a program that you just bought instead of a subscription, I would probably be on board for it. But the fact that it's all subscription now, I'm like, I don't really. I'm not big. I mean, obviously that's why I'm not using Adobe for my personal stuff. It's not that I dislike Photoshop or Illustrator. They're still the industry standard. I still use them on my work computer. But on my personal computer, I've moved away from subscription programs. I just prefer buying something and having it for the one time. I mean, I feel like eventually everything's going to go subscription. So got to live with it. But for now, I've tried Clip Studio. I will tell you, I haven't given Clip Studio Paint a fair shake, but I've tried it a couple of times. And I just don't like the interface. It's personal preference. It's not that I think it's bad. So yeah, more people are giving shout outs on more software there. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says Medibang has been around for a while, and Paint Tool Sci. And yeah, another second there. Play it 90 players says I use Paint Tool Sci. I've heard of Paint Tool Sci, but I have never opened it once. So, all right, guys. So again, you've seen me sit here and just draw a bunch of eyes. I think that the problem with this is one of those where it might be more interesting. I'm not going to sit here and do a separate stream later where I narrate it. But I feel like this is one of those where I need to sit and sketch by myself without talking to anybody. And I need to kind of go inside my head and figure out what it is I really want, why it's not coming out, what I want to change, that kind of thing. I need to get, you know what? All this talk while I was on here, I didn't see any comments about the flow state. Do you guys have any thoughts on that at all about, getting into the flow? I mean, am I talking weird woo-woo stuff that like you're like, get off that crazy tip? Or do you guys actually even think about the flow state? Does it play any part in your creative processes? Curious to hear some thoughts on that. But that said, after whatever we touch on that, after that, I'm gonna wrap it up here for today, and I'm gonna go into my cocoon and see if I can dig out some truths. Go try and dig deeper and figure out what it is that I want from this piece. And I thought going to a completely opaque brush as opposed to the low opacity brush would help me cut down on all the extraneous marks that I make. Force me to limit myself to just what the piece really needs. But it is not working out that way. Yeah, I must have missed it in terms of scrolling down. Amar says that he commented on the flow state, and he says, my comment was, yeah, I make art regardless of what state I'm in. I don't need to get into a flow state. I just need to sit down and do with less excuse. That's when I get into that state. Just like when I was writing over the holiday break. See, that's the thing. It's not necessarily that I need to be in the flow state to get work done. In fact, my whole point is that I've trained myself to work whether I'm in the flow state or not, to just sit down and make stuff. But what I'm finding lately is that I'm having more and more trouble satisfying myself in terms of the quality. I It's almost like going for a walk, or it's like pizza. When I sit down and draw, it's good. Even if the drawings come out bad, it's good. That's how I feel about the act of making art. I never need to be in the flow state to sit down and be creative and enjoy the creative process. But enjoying the creative process and being satisfied with results are two different things. So I can sit down and spend 8 hours drawing, and all of the drawings, every single piece in there is garbage. And I will still have enjoyed the time I spent doing it. But the difference for me is, have I drawn something that I want to put my name on? Have I drawn something that I stand behind and want to sell, that I can tell some other people, this is worth your hard-earned money. The picture I've drawn is dynamic, or the story I've written is something that is worth your time to read. Because honestly, as much as we want the money, we do. We want money is a form of validation. But I think that the most precious thing that people have is time and attention right now. We live in an attention economy. People are constantly distracted. And I will tell you that I back a ton of Kickstarters. And a lot of times, if it's just I back it because I like the creator, I may get the digital PDF instead of getting the physical book. And I've got like a whole folder on my computer full of unread PDFs. And it's not out of disrespect to the creators. It's that I don't even have time to get to them. Much like my physical to read pile, my digital to read pile is overflowing. And I say this to say that I want to, when I put a product for sale, whether it's making a print or selling an original or selling a comic, I want it to be not just worth their financial investment in whatever that work is. I want it to be worth them spending time with it. If it's a print, I want it to be the kind of thing where every time they look at that print on their walls, they get a glow and they're like, oh yeah, I'm glad I got this. Every time they read the story. In fact, just doing a book that's worth someone reading more than once. Do you know how hard it is to make something that is worth reading more than once? There's books that I love that I've only read two or three times in my life. In fact, yeah, there's very few books I've read that I've read more than twice. Not because they aren't worth it, but because there's so many more things to read. And so that's why the whole conversation about the flow state is, I feel like maybe the lack of getting into the flow state is the reason why, even if I'm enjoying the act of making art, I still may not be satisfied with the results. And that's the thing that that's what I'm exploring now, because I've been working on this piece since last year. It's been ages of me working on, slowly roughing this out, trying different poses and adjusting things. And it's still not quite hitting its mark. And when I get to that point, then it becomes a question of problem solving. Why am I not hitting that mark? Now, to be fair, when I talk about working on this since last year, yeah, I did a different Medusa piece that I finished. But I will tell you that Medusa piece that I have for sale right now, I stand by it, but I kind of want to redo that piece as well. So It's a matter of what I do and don't want to put out in the world. And I don't expect something to be perfect, but I do expect it to be worth someone's time and mental space and satisfaction. I think if you don't make a piece that satisfies people, then I don't know, it's going to be harder to monetize your work. And if it's hard to monetize your work, it's going to be hard to be able to spend more time working on it because you're going to be doing other things to make money. It is a vicious feedback loop. Yeah, Amar says, I sat down and said, I need to, let's get to it. I need to write. This sounds like a mental battle to what you consider the good or the purpose of drawing or the art you're creating. Let's see here. Jay King says, thanks for the time and answering all my questions, brother and people. I think that goes out much more to the rest of you in the chat watching and hanging out than it does to me. I gave a couple of recommendations, but all of you guys chimed in. And again, that's the thing I love about this community. That's what I love about you guys hanging out on the chat and talking and contributing to this. I greatly appreciate it. Let's see here. Amar, of course, says no problem. And he says, I do that as well for books and movies. Changes. Turn and face the strain. A little David Bowie to take us out. All right, guys. I will continue with my battles here. At some point, Amar, I think I need to get you back on the chat again for a live stream so we can chop this up like in front of audiences. We'll see whenever you're down or free to hang out. We'll talk. We'll chop it up and figure something out. But you always have great things to comment and share and add to the conversation. So being able to talk in real time, I think, would be a bonus. Well, hell, I mean, honestly, we can even do it with just the regular live stream and just open up the Discord chat the way I've done in the past. I mean, I'm not sure if that audio, that audio. I'll have to double check where that audio comes through on the YouTube live stream. But on that note, I'm going to continue figuring out what the hell I'm doing with this piece, and hopefully bring it in for a landing sooner rather than later. Now that I finished that dragon painting, I can give it a proper, give other artwork. Amar says, I'm always down. I can chime in on NFTs as well. Yeah, we can have an NFT chat plus NFT bonus. We'll get into that and everything else. Now that I finished that dragon painting for my wife, now that that Morningstar is out in the world, completed, I can start giving other illustration projects, like giving this piece my full attention. And thank you guys for giving me your partial attention during this this live stream. I hope you guys spent a little bit of time creating as well, and then along with enjoying this rousing conversation. I hope you guys have found something inspiring and interesting, maybe made some breakthroughs or stepped up to some challenges in your own work. If you'd like to support this channel, get additional bonus live streams twice a month. You can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. Again, thanks so much to King's Lowfit for becoming a new Patreon subscriber, joining our tribe over there. If you'd like to sign up for my newsletter, get a free digital sketchbook, get some work in progress animated GIFs delivered directly into your inbox, find out when I've got new artwork or new comics available for sale. Someday, when I'm going back to conventions, find out when I've got new convention appearances, all that and more at my newsletter. It's newsletter.jeremy.net. And you can go to amazon.com to pick up physical copies of my comics. They are... got my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. It's a self-contained, done-in-one graphic novel, black and white, 140-odd pages. There's Morningstar, Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8, the completion of the story. The whole complete series in these 2 volumes both have copious back matter, sketches, character designs, script excerpts, and more. Get that at amazon.jeremy.net. One more question before I sign off, and people feel free to leave comments in the chat. I have been very, very behind schedule in terms of getting Morningstar and Eye of the Gods on other book retailer platforms. I know some people some people only buy stuff from Amazon. Some people find Amazon and the power, the control of the market very objectionable, and they refuse to buy anything from Amazon. I have been meaning to get it on Ingram Spark so that it can be bought at bookstores, to get it on Barnes and Noble, to be able to have it so that you can order it from your local bookstore as well, to get on other online book retailers, get it on Kobo and Nook. I need to look into those things in terms of like how complicated it is, or whether there's a platform. There are platforms like Draft to Digital where you can just upload prose books and it'll distribute it and get it on all those platforms. But I don't know if it's that easy for graphic novels as well. So I need to look into that. You guys tell me in the comments, is having those books on other platforms and being able to buy them from places other than Amazon, is that an appeal for you? Is that something that you feel, oh, that's what's been holding me off? Like, I'd love to pick up some of Jeremy's books, but damn it, I hate ordering from Amazon. If that's true, let me know. I want to hear that from you guys in the chat. I know some people feel that way, but I don't know how big it is within my audience. That said, I don't think I'm going to get it done like this week, next week, this month, maybe next month. We'll see. If I hear a flood of people saying, please, God, get it on some other platforms, Apple Books, Google Play Bookstore, all of that. If you guys are telling me, please, please, please get it on other platforms, then I will do so. I'll make it a higher priority. If it's just crickets, then I'm like, get to it when I get to it. All right, guys. Again, thank you so much for spending time and hanging out. I really appreciate you guys. I love you guys. It's fun hanging out, talking art, talking process, talking philosophy, talking my mad perfectionist ass. I have to really own it now. I keep saying, well, I'm not really a perfectionist. You know what? I'll tell you, this is the reason why I don't want to consider myself a perfectionist, is because even when I try my hardest, I still don't feel like my work is perfect. That's why I don't like calling myself a perfectionist, because I feel like a perfectionist should be able to achieve perfection, and I do not. But that mindset might be the leading cause for my perfectionism. Regardless, I got to own it. I am a perfectionist. I don't want to be, but I am. I need to become a recovering perfectionist. All right, all you recovering perfectionists out there, that's it for now. Go be creative.